Welcome to Cyber Threat Thursday. I'm Kristin Judge from the Cybercrime Support Network, and I am so honored to have these two guests with me here today. So our first guest is Sam Kunjukunju, who is from the American Bankers Association Foundation, and then we have Supervisory Special Agent Dayna Kendall from the FBI. So this is going to be a really fantastic discussion about romance scams because it is Valentine's Day week. And romance scams are really impacting people, especially around Valentine's Day and through the COVID pandemic that we've been experiencing. So I'm so excited to have you here. And Supervisory Special Agent Kendall, could you introduce yourself first, please?
Sure. So my name is Dayna Kendall. I'm a Supervisory Special Agent with the FBI. I am currently the Program Manager for the Elder Justice Initiative out of our headquarters division at the FBI. That means basically I'm a resource for our field offices, as well as all of our law enforcement partners, our federal partners, and civil entities. As it relates to elder fraud and then the Elder Justice Initiative.
That is no small task.
No, it's not. So I've been with the Bureau for a little over almost 7 years now. And then prior to working at the Bureau, I worked in the financial services industry. I've been working this initiative now for about 6 months, and it's very near and dear to my heart. It's been great work to push forward, work with our partners. It's been good.
It's very rewarding because people need us. Yeah, thank you. And Sam, how about you?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is Sam Kunjukunju, and I'm the Senior Director of Bank Community Engagement at the American Bankers Association. I work through our foundation, which is the 501c3 nonprofit arm of the ABA. That's the American Bankers Association, and we provide free programs and resources to help banks support the financial well-being of their customers and their communities. Much of my work specifically involves developing materials and partnering with banks to educate customers and communities all across the nation on combating elder financial exploitation. So I know I look like I'm maybe 18, 20, 25, depending on the day, but I promise you I've been working in the field of elders for almost 12 to 13 years or so.
And I've had the pleasure of working with you through 2 different jobs, so I'm very excited to have you here. So Agent Kendall, could you talk to us a little bit first about what is a romance scam? There could be some people that still are not quite sure what that actually is. Give us sort of the details of what it looks like, if you would.
Sure. So basically what happens is the perpetrator or the scammer will often, they'll use a online social medium. So whether that's a dating website or social media itself, to create a fake persona, often with fake photos, not who they really are, different names. And what they do is they start looking for target victims where that they can exploit. And what they'll look at is maybe a victim's social media site, their dating profile, things like that, gleaning information off of there in order to identify what matters most to that person. And then what they'll do is they'll talk with the victim and start endearing themselves to that person, reaching out to them, especially if it's on a dating application or if it's just for friends, turning into something more. They basically, look at that person and start talking about whether it's kids or common likes, interests, dislikes, political, etc., to kind of gain that person's trust. And they start forming a relationship. Oftentimes these relationships form very quickly. It might be the person that the victim is a widow or divorced, looking for companionship. Maybe not. And it's just this hits for them, something that they like. They like the person because, they're talking about all the same things that they enjoy. And so, the perpetrator then they may even propose very quickly. The relationship will move very quickly, but they won't ever meet in person. So they won't arrange for an in-person meet. They won't do a video call, things like that. And what will happen eventually, and these take sometimes short periods of time, or they'll actually put a lot of effort. The relationship will seem very, very real because of how much effort the scammer is putting into it. And so eventually there's an ask for money. It could be a small amount at first, could be $300. I need to pay this fee in order, I'm having trouble right now. And they start that going that way. Sometimes it usually evolves into a much larger amount over the course of the relationship and for various excuses. I need to, I would love to come visit you, but I can't right now. My mother's in the hospital and I'm really hurting for money and I have to pay all these bills, or it could be, I have an investment opportunity. I'd like to get you in with this. If you send me $100,000, I can help, we can buy this property. The sky's the limit for the imagination on the part of the scammer. And so they're kind of working that until the person is bled out of all their money and all their savings.
And that's a good explanation of what that is. And it's one of the crimes that just makes me cringe the most, because they really do take care of people that are most vulnerable or take advantage of. And Sam, Agent Kendall was talking about how they say things that they have in common with you. Well, how does that happen? What are we doing online that is allowing some of these criminals to really know everything about us?
Yeah, we're in a very digital age these days, right? So everyone has social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, etc. We post everything from what we're eating to where we're traveling, what we're doing, what we're thinking, every little thing. We're very much encouraged to share everything about ourselves. And unfortunately, through this process, there are scam artists that are really egregious criminals or engaging in egregious behavior, looking for all of these types of personal information to find ways to connect with you and then use that to their advantage to essentially scam out of every sort of thing. So they might find a connection about what you're eating. Hey, we're both vegan. Let's do this. Let's talk about these specific situations. Or you like traveling. I love going to the mountains. So there's a lot of different opportunities, unfortunately, to take advantage of the existing information that's out there and to share these pieces. One of the challenges, especially that comes into play as Agent Kendall was kind of talking about, is that they have these stories, right? They have a lot of different stories. They may have stories about the fact that they can't meet in person because they're outside of the United States and in the military, or working on an oil rig, or a doctor in an international organization, or maybe they're stuck abroad because of COVID. That's another added complication right now that seems very legitimate, but certainly could be a complicating scenario that just adds to this criminal activity and what's going on to take advantage of the individual. So they may use that to exploit the situation and say, you have someone in the military. Well, I'm in the military and I'm abroad, and they'll find out about that through your social media. So those are some of the examples and some of the ways that this happens right now.
Yeah, and Agent Kendall, you mentioned something about widows and widowers, and I have had experiences in our family that we are finding that the bad guys are following the obituaries. Have you seen any kind of tie to that? So if someone says, oh, I just lost my dear husband, and here's the obituary with all the information about it, then do the scammers try and friend those people on Facebook or look for them?
Well, again, I think I go back to the sky's the limit for their imagination. So if that's a resource that they're using, they're going to exploit it as best they can. It could be, to Sam's point on, what we're putting out there, it could be just a comment made on social media. But to your point about my husband just passed and I'm so sorry for your loss, well, somebody could see that and see an opportunity. So really it comes to taking advantage of an opportunity the scammer sees to maybe exploit an opening.
Yeah, and could you tell me the importance, Agent Kendall, about reporting, and why is it so important? First of all, talk about, so what is the IC3, and then Sam, you can tell us about the FTC. What is the IC3, Internet Crime Complaint Center, and why is it important if someone has been impacted by a romance scam to report it?
So the IC3, it's www.ic3.gov. It is the Internet Crime Complaint Center. And essentially it's all types of crime that basically take place over the internet. So it could, in this case, often, like I said, social media sites, dating websites, that kind of nature, reporting it through this way. We need people to report it. We do feel as though these are highly, highly underreported. I think that people, that feel very taken advantage of. They don't think it's enough, for example, like enough of a loss. That's just any loss is a loss. So we need that reported, and we need it reported so we know what's happening. So we know what kind of scams are getting perpetrated, how people are being used, so we can get out more word and potentially investigate and stop that. So as much information, we always say we need the public. So.
Yeah, thank you. And Sam, I know ABA Foundation has done a lot of great work to work with the banks to help educate people about these scams. Could you talk a little bit about that program that you work on?
Yeah, absolutely. So, with the work that we do, we've noticed that quite often there's a disproportionate impact on the elderly when it comes to romance scams and a lot of different types of scams that are going on. For example, with the FTC, there's data that they found just looking at issues from 2020 in which the median loss for romance scams was around $2,500. But when you look at individuals 70 and older, it was nearly 4 times that at almost about $9,500 median loss. So through our work at the ABA Foundation, we partner with banks where we provide resources for banks across the nation, whether they're a member of the American Bankers Association or not. Because this is such an important issue, we provide all of this free information so that banks can go out to the communities through our Safe Banking for Seniors program to share about how to protect your assets and your identities. It's a free program where banks lead in-person sessions when it's non-COVID times, and then as well as virtual sessions as well through Zoom or various webinar types of formats and opportunities as well. And what's really fantastic about it is we've also developed an online platform for any sort of consumer group, whether you are in the, in a sheriff's department with law enforcement, or whether you're a nonprofit organization or faith-based ministry, whoever you are, we want to get the word out, and you can request a free presentation by going to access our FinEd Link portal, which stands for Financial Education Link. And you go to visit aba.com, like American Bankers Association. So that's aba.com/FinEd Link.
And Demetria just put that in the chat for us so everybody could see it, which is great.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, and you bring up COVID, Sam. So Agent Kendall, what are we seeing as far as romance scams or any of these scams right now? I know the FBI has been putting out a lot of great articles about what's happening because of COVID in the scam world. What's happening in the US?
Yeah, I think that with anything, any fraud, any of the spikes that we're seeing, anything that we're seeing, is it a result of COVID? I mean, there are more people online, there are people at home, there are people that, that could be, certainly a component. Also, in some regard, how much is getting reported now? So is this something that, maybe we're getting more out there, so I think there's a lot of factors that play into that. But I do think that with COVID, it's important to recognize that more people are spending time online and, isolated. So we want people to be aware that they could, because of that, be a little bit more vulnerable, a little bit more, out there and using these platforms. So to be more mindful of what's out there and what could be targeting them and using them for money. And
well, and the isolation isn't just seniors. There used to be more of a concern about seniors being isolated if they live alone, especially in non-city areas. But now even young people are isolated because they may not be leaving their house for months at a time because of COVID, if they have pre-existing conditions or something. So, it really can be an issue. And Sam, do you think that the typical romance scammer, the bad guy or gal who's doing this, do they just do one relationship at a time, or do you think they might be trying to fish for more than one person?
They're probably serial scammers going after everyone they possibly can, right? They're just, imagine it like fishing. You're just trying to get as much, whoever's going to take the bait, that's who they're going to go after. And you find, particularly in this circumstance, you'll find that there are younger individuals, that there are middle-aged individuals, older adults. It's all across the board that it's happening. In fact, through the FTC, they have a consumer sentinel database where individuals can report this type of fraud using reportfraud.ftc.gov. Again, let me say that again. It's reportfraud.ftc.gov. And using that data, they've actually found that younger people in 2020, between 20 to 29-year-old, there's been quite a bit of an increase, and much of the scams were actually happening against individuals that are about 40 to 69 years of age, at least according to their Consumer Sentinel. So we're seeing a lot of this all across the board, but at the same time, the higher levels of losses tend to be among the older adults, and they could be a specific target because they've worked, for 35, 45 years, and they have higher net worths. So that ends up being the problem that's contributing to this situation all across the board.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because so many times people think, oh, well, they're older, so they're more gullible or they're vulnerable because they aren't good at technology. No. Why would you go after my 23-year-old son who doesn't have any money versus, my parents who are retired and have a nest egg and a home and retirement fund? So people are targeting the ones who they think have the most money. Like, why do you rob a bank? Because that's where the money is. So I think it's important that we dispel this rumor that, oh, they just go after old people because they don't know what they're doing. No, that's not true. And I think we also find that many times when someone is embroiled in a romance scam, their family tries to help. And have you had any experience with that, Agent Kendall, where it's a little bit harder for the family to convince someone that they're in a romance scam?
Yes, of course, because like I said before, the scammers are very, very convincing. So, and they utilize and mine that information from the websites that go, what they know all this about me, and that, we have all these interests. So they've used all of that to facilitate the scam. So it just keeps perpetuating that. And then the families, and I encourage that as well with families. If you suspect and you believe, we take those reports as well. I mean, people are like, I think my mother, I think my father, I think my aunt, my brother, whatever the case may be. It is important for us to identify that, because to your point, people they don't know they're getting scammed, or they don't want to admit it to their loved ones. Because like I said before, some are embarrassed, and it's nothing, it can happen to anybody. And I do want to add, with the age factor, you're right. It is because to some extent, how much money can I get from somebody? But not to dispel that this happens to everybody. So yes, we find it happens to older individuals, but to make sure everybody is aware and mindful of what could be occurring. So, and then reporting. We'll keep saying report. And I will say, like, IC3.gov does have a lot of resources on there. They do have informational pamphlets, things like that. And then we do as well. And then, we'll provide some of those websites. But
there are definitely great resources out there from all of our organizations. And we're very excited that we created Scamspotter.org with Google. And that has been a really popular site. And part of the reason we created it was that if you are having an issue and your family member isn't listening to you, you can go to this site and sit down with them and say, well, let's look at these 3 golden rules. Did they propose to you within the first 2 weeks of meeting them? Did they ask you for money? Here's some things. So it's a third party saying, look, this could be a scam, and it's not just coming from your kids who are worried about the money. So, with all of the resources that we have, and I'm really excited to see a lot of organizations talking about this week, because it is one of the #1 scams that people come to fraud support for. So, Sam, anything else that you wanted to share about what you're seeing in this space of romance scams, or what the banks are doing or ABA is doing?
Yeah, sure. So one of the places that we've also put some additional tips and resources for consumers is right at aba.com/consumers. So there are great tips that anyone can access just to understand how you can protect yourself and your financial assets, protect yourself and your money. Again, that website is aba.com/consumers. So there's a lot of great resources that are there to help share information about romance scams, as well as other types of scams that are going on. And then in terms of what banks are doing, so banks obviously recognize that this is a huge issue. So one of the good pieces that they're doing is trying to engage in different types of instructional sessions that I referenced earlier, as well as just direct education at the teller counter. When they see an individual and they see that they may be taking out quite a bit of money that's not consistent with their normal patterns of behavior, they'll start to ask questions about what's going on. Now, there is a fine line between being paternalistic and being protective. So there's only so much that a bank can do in these types of scenarios. We don't necessarily always have the appropriate authority to say, you're an older adult, you shouldn't be taking out this amount of money. I mean, that's definitely not in line with anything that we want to do per se. But education-wise, it's really keen for us to share about this information as much as possible, ask questions about what's going on, and then simultaneously, there's also use of artificial intelligence software looking at patterns of behavior to see if something is off, if someone's trying to wire money, if they've never wired money and then all of a sudden they want to wire $100,000, that's usually going to be a red flag that will be caught. But education is also key. So it's a multi-pronged effort that bankers are usually utilizing to essentially mitigate these scams.
Yeah, I remember the first time I met you, we talked about how you're educating tellers, and which is really great, because if they have a relationship, I know my mother-in-law has a great relationship with the women in the bank. She's been going there 50 years and they know her. And if they said to her, are you sure you're okay with this? They would feel comfortable having that conversation, and she would probably listen to them. So Yeah, really important, those relationships. And then Agent Kendall, where do you think we're going to be going with romance scams? Look out a few years from now. I know it's just one of the kinds of imposter scams that the FBI deals with. Any thoughts on where we're going to be in the future?
I think we need to focus on how we approach it now and what messaging we're putting out there. I mean, certainly is we want to make sure that we are getting out this reporting. We are getting out that how these are being orchestrated. If, to Sam's point about some of the resources, we have a lot of stuff on FBI.gov. We have the otherjustice.gov that has examples of how to avoid financial exploitation. The way we get this down and the way those numbers go down is by getting people aware and stopping it now. And so it's something that we just have to figure out and communicate out to the world. I mean, as it is now, we were last year, like I said, it's about 600 million that we're at approximate loss for 2020 for victims over, roughly 20
of the people who reported to IC3. Those are just the reported ones. Yeah.
So
this is
just for romance fraud and romance scam. So right. I mean, is just to make sure that it's just for that. So that's the thing is, we're seeing these numbers. We need to work to get them down so that we're minimizing people's losses, and we're making sure that they're aware of what kinds of things are done and where they can go to report it, and we can do as best we can to help them, either with the investigation, but it's also, we are looking at prevention as number one, because once the money goes, we all know that's very difficult. So we want to do prevention. We want to work on our investigations, and then we work on our partnerships to address this problem as a whole. So, it's multi-pronged, and this is how we are planning to go forward and work this problem.
Yeah, one of the things we focus on is decreasing re-victimization, because we may not be able to stop people the first time, but if we can talk to them after they've been through the experience once and help them learn from that, then we may be able to get them to even tell other people and talk about it. This is one of the things I think this victimization, especially around the romance scams, because it is tied to your heart, it's very personal. People don't want to talk about it. But Sam, what happens if we start talking about this and victims start coming out and telling their stories? How's that going to impact everybody else?
Yeah, I think, emphasizing a little bit, speaking to the point that you talked about with some of the humiliation, if we can move past some of those challenges, we can make sure that other people are not equally humiliated or equally victimized, right? If we all come from the perspective that this is happening to everyone, I'm not stupid for falling into this situation. It's because there are genius scam artists that are working to target and work on social engineering techniques to go after these individuals all across the country. We're all in the same sort of boat. And we all need to recognize about this potential for loss and being victimized. And so when you have that opportunity to come out and share about it, we'll have a lot more people recognize the signs, recognize the issues that are at hand, and arguably also prevent future challenges.
Exactly. And so, Agent Kendall, would you recommend that people talk to others in their family? If someone starts dating someone new, what could be some of the things that people could do? If you see someone in your family who might be dating someone new, what kind of tools can someone use and share?
Well, I think any of the normal questions. I mean, tell me about this person. What are they how did you meet them? Show me show me their dating profile. Let me see this person. Those kinds of things, because, it much like the fine line of how do you talk to somebody, or you shouldn't send this money, or you shouldn't take out this much money. Same thing with this is, people are going to get defensive if they think their family already doesn't believe or doesn't trust their judgment and things. So you really need to be mindful of how can you talk them through to find out if the story makes sense. And I think there are a lot of flags. There are, we tell people to look at photos, make sure, search the photo online, because you can see if it's a canned photo. Making sure that the information you put out there, there are things that you don't put out into the public. And then big red flag if you don't meet somebody within a few months. So for families, it's like, what is this person? Have you met them in person? Have you talked to them, even if it's by Zoom or some video conferencing thing, or whatever it is? Make sure that that person does truly exist. And those are the kinds of things that family, and I think eventually, if there is a scam going on, get as much detail from the person as possible, amounts, what happened, the story, and then that can be reported if something has already taken place.
Yeah, really good point, to not put them on the defensive, because they think they're in love and they think that someone loves them too. And that's a very personal thing that you can get defensive about pretty quickly. Good point. Sam, anything you wanted to share about, if this is happening to people in your lives, what would you suggest they do?
Well, one of the things I'll also recommend is if you're sending money out to your banks, through your banks rather, I'll say immediately report it to your bank as well. In addition to reporting it to the FTC and then the FBI, definitely report it to your bank about what's going on. Secondly, report it directly to the app or the social media site. So if it's Facebook or Instagram that you are having these conversations with, make sure that you appropriately have a conversation, email, get in touch with the organization or the app itself to let them know exactly what's been going on. And then with the family or the friends, ask questions, start talking. It's always better to, ask a question from a place of love rather than to say, hey, I think this is a wrong relationship. Don't say that, but comment it from, hey, have you guys had a chance to meet in person? Have you met their families? Have you been sending money to these people? Just ask questions about what the source is. Does this sound like this is okay to you? I've been hearing about a lot of these types of things. I'm just coming from a place of concern. Those types of questions and conversations will be much more important and helpful rather than saying, hey, I think this is a romance scam.
Yeah, great. And if someone is involved in a romance scam, I like the point that you said, make sure you talk to your bank right away if you have sent any money. And if you go to fraudsupport.org, we have some immediate steps to take once you do notice something is a romance scam. And it's the page on romance scams has the most long-term visits. So people are on there for about 8 minutes on a web page, which anyone who knows about web page time, that's a lifetime. And they're always, we can see they look at the reverse image search. So to Agent Kendall's point, they want to see, okay, is this picture anywhere else? And we've been working with some military folks, and some of those pictures are on thousands of sites, thousands of fake websites, fake accounts on the dating sites, and then thousands of fake Facebook pages. So if it is one that's been used a lot, you might be able to find out that it's a scam pretty easily just by doing the Google search. This is great. So thank you. I want to close up with just some last few points that you might want to make and share with our audience. It's been so great to have both of you here talking about romance scams. It's so important that we talk to people in our lives, have the conversations. And if you have been a victim, share with someone else what happened to you, because you might save someone else. So Agent Kendall, anything you'd like to close us off with?
Yeah, I think, just utilize the resources that both Sam and I have presented today. Do not, again, no loss is too small, and never, we need to get past any embarrassment, anything like that. And then, just be mindful of what and who are approaching you through online sources. So you are making sure you're protecting yourself.
Thank you. And thank you for the great work that you do with helping agents all around the country with this issue. And Sam, how about you?
Just kind of the same point, that report it as much as you can to the proper authorities, whether it's the bank, the FBI, the FTC, and the organization, meaning the app or the dating website itself. Make sure to get the word out around that. And then, get educated. Contact your banks about Safe Banking for Seniors. Check out our website and our resources about what we have available. And make sure that you can share as much information about what's going on with whomever you know, because if you can get the word out, we can help eliminate this problem.
Yes, we have to make it so romance scams are not profitable for the bad guys. So once they're not profitable, they'll stop doing it. So it's up to all of us to talk about it so we can decrease the profitability of the scam. So thank you again to both of you for being here and for the great work that you do. It really is a public-private partnership. We're all in this together, and together we really are making a difference. So thank you again for being here today. I'm Kristin Judge with the Cybercrime Support Network. Thanks for joining me on Cyber Threat Thursday. We'll see you again next week with more guests. and again on Cyber Tip Tuesday. Check out fraudsupport.org and all the other great resources that are listed in the chat here, and we'll see you again next week. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.